Hello and welcome to the Wednesday check-in here on Landy's Crypto Corner, powered by the Gokhstein News Network. Today is June 18th, 2025. We're looking at Bitcoin here on the daily to start. And we did get the move down that I talked about on Monday after the rejection that we got in the lower term timeframes on the Monday candle. It was looking like, if Bitcoin could stay above the basis, it would still have a chance to kind of head up and try to test. But it was kind of a tall order when I was evaluating some of the lower term timeframes. So we did come down to one of the key areas that I talked about, and that's kind of the 101 to 104 area. And, I've been talking about closes above 104 preferred for bulls. And we thus far have seen closes above 104 on the bearish candle over here for Tuesday at 104.590. And then yesterday we did get a close right around the 104.900 area, just shy of 105 there. Now, Bitcoin is in the bearish half of the bands now, so bears do have an opportunity, but it would be right into support here. And I'm not really concerned about price action in this overall area or this range until I see closes below 101. If we hadn't already seen a test down to this 100,377 or 100,400, then I would look for it. And any closes below there, then I'm looking for the structure over here to get tagged. Essentially, the top side at 98 to 95 on the closes here. Fair game. There's the point of control there at 96K. And then, of course, that weekly higher low close open at 93.5. Right around this area here where this move kind of originated from after this range over here was regained. That's going to be very, very important if we do see price breakdown, especially on closes below 101. If it hasn't tested $100,000 and under, then I'd look for it. Now, we do have a swing downtrend here and a closing lower high. This did come on another drive of bearish divergence. And in this case, as long as we're seeing, we have the higher high, swing higher low, swing lower high, and then a closing lower high here. But it doesn't do much. And I had mentioned this on Monday. This just starts to paint a range and a consolidation structure and kind of awaiting the next big move. And it's pretty simple. Back above the 109, we're likely going to move to that 110, 112 region up by the highs here. And then any closes above there, we kick off expansion to the upside to some of the targets that I've talked about, 112 to 115. And then it really is kind of 115 to 120, maybe swings up to like 122. And then the major overhead area that we'll look at in a moment that I've talked about quite a lot. Some of you might be getting sick of me saying it over and over again, but $128,000 is both confluent with the prior big move down from the 109,360 to the 74, what was it, 74,420 area here. That is confluent local with a local 1414 Fibonacci extension at $128,000, and then also the macro bull to bear market Fibonacci extension 1414 from last cycle high to the most recent bear market low. Now, in this case, not much to be said as long as Bitcoin is trading below 109, right? More biased to the downside. Still want to see 104 hold on closes for the bulls there, but if it does start to dip in, just watch the bottom side here. Around the closes at 101.5, if we start seeing price get down there towards this lower second, then we'd be looking at expansion into the low side candles here. And the swing at 100,377. Any closes below there would beget expansion with a break of the low structure and losing a major area of interest for support and resistance as a zone. Let's go ahead and put that zone on the board here real quick. And you can very easily see that Bitcoin is kind of trapped right now in between the no man's land, which is technically its own kind of zone of interest between 104 and 106. Closes back above 106 in the basis, and I would look for some tests at least up to the 108, possibly 109, 110 region up here. That would look pretty good for the bulls. Of course, any breakdown below the lower first standard deviation of the bands here, and I'd be looking for that 101 to 104. Any closes, as I had mentioned, below the lower second that breaks down below 101. We're looking at the lows here, and anywhere lower than there, we're looking for expansion, and that is on a closing basis. Swings down below, by the way, swings below the 101 area here of the yellow zone are fair game, but as long as it's closing back inside 101, it's not that concerning. And, especially closing on top of 104 is fine for now. What is the setup looking like on something like a 12-hour? That is going to be fairly interesting. Yeah, so it is a bit of a range, starting to get that downside expansion because of the closes below the lower first standard deviation, but it's expansion into support. And you can see how this is confluent, painting a very clear picture below the lower second and lower third standard deviation, essentially closing below 101 would be expansion on the 12-hour into this low and more than likely lower. And if it hadn't already expanded into the low here and swung it at that 100,377, then I would look for it to get that expansion, test the high side over here at the 98. There is the point of control there, or the highest volume traded price there at 96K or so. And then the top side of the candles over here at 95. It gets dangerous for the bulls down towards this last weekly closing higher low structure at 93.5. As I'd mentioned, this was, Bitcoin rejected the bottom side of the prior range over here. And after rejecting the bottom side there, when we saw Bitcoin reclaim, it actually reclaimed ever so slightly, and then just kind of, ramped up right through the 88.7 to 92 area, paused around the 93.5 weekly, consolidated, swung up to hit some of the consolidation structure prior to the breakdown, and then held that weekly on higher low close before moving up to make the new all-time high. So that would be a very, very important area if we did see prices starting to break down. On the other side of that, be aware that up towards the 110 region, we have to see closes above 110 for the 12-hour, and of course the daily to really paint the picture that we're going to run the highs and possibly higher. See the upper seconds right around there, and the upper thirds just above the all-time high there at 112. So not too crazy, fairly clear setups for the bulls and the bears here in this consolidation zone. So it is just a range. 106 is going to look pretty good. And as I mentioned, that's the bottom side of the green zone there for momentum. Still pointed down for the 12-hour here. Let's go to a lower term time frame like the 4-hour. Let's see where we're at. It might be, yeah, so it's trying to pick itself up off the floor just above the oversold zone. 104.8, 105 region is going to be what you need to pay attention to there. We are starting to get some 4-hour bullish divergence. Again, lower term time frames, bulls want to see a closing structures like on the 4-hour follow through with that 12-hour close and above for the daily, above 106. That would really start to look good for that 110 to 112 region again. So far, it's just kind of waffling around post FOMC meeting, which, by the way, we did get it actually disappeared, but there was no rate change, and that was pretty expected. So Powell's sitting on his hands for now. Economic data is improving. They did acknowledge that in the actual the outlook, and this is where I really think, and this is just my thesis, is that we're not going to see the Fed cut until we see the passing and signing into law of the Stablecoin Act, or the Genius Act. I'm sorry. As that's a vector for hoovering up U.S. Treasuries, and the Fed is usually the buyer of last resort. So I could see them making a move, even in a mixed environment, for the rates to move down if there is a vector for hoovering up Treasuries that is outside of themselves as the buyer of last resort kind of thing. And that's where essentially, if the Fed lowers interest rates and demand lags, and the actual Fed fund rate is too far below the Treasury yield then they do balance sheet expansion. I refer to that, and they do not refer to this in this way, but very simply I refer to that as like soft QE. It's basically quantitative easing without making it a policy for tranche buys. But in this case, we'll see where things head. That is my thesis. I don't know if it's a good one or not. We'll find out, right? Let's go take a look at the weekly again. Just remind ourselves where things are on the weekly. Upper first standard deviation is kind of where price is hanging around right now. It did dip below a little bit for that Tuesday candle and even a little bit in the Wednesday session. Now, of course, it's still Wednesday, but the Thursday session, Wednesday for me at least here in the States, but it is the Thursday session that is open. So, I'll cover this on Friday again, but watch that 104.5, 105 area. That is where the upper first standard deviation is. As it is holding price up on a closing basis for the weekly. And if we do start to see a breach of that, it's very highly likely we will see a bit of a swing downtrend form. But realistically, this would be a closing high, a complex closing high up here. And, a lot of indecision around the highs. We've seen Bitcoin on the daily consolidate and go sideways and chop around and paint all kinds of bullish and bearish signals and then just take off, right? That's kind of since the 420.69 low came in down here. The daily was doing that. There is always the possibility that the weekly does it, although I do want to check on the weekly. It's like 111, I think, is the pivot. Yeah, 111, almost 111.5 is what would be needed to close that. Also, if we do see a closing high in, this is a significantly lower RSI read as compared to the highs over here. So we would get bearish divergence. Now, we did get a downtrend, right? So we were in an uptrend here, and then we got a downtrend in between. So while it would be relevant, it'd be relevant on a bearish divergence for a correction down into what I would look for as higher low, equal low structures, the more statistically likely outcome if it did start to paint a closing high up here. And the more significant bearish divergences that I'd be looking for would be any kind of in-trend bearish divergence that could emerge from that structure. Otherwise, there is always the possibility that we go higher high to lower low, but that's it is available from a volatility standpoint, by the way, but it's not the more likely outcome, at least as it stands right now. But whenever we do see a weekly high actually paint on a close, which we still have not gotten, then we can evaluate from there and kind of talk about that in a little bit more detail. Again, to the upside above 112, look into that upper second. That if this candle were to turn green, this is likely going to be around that 115 region. So watch closely. Swings above are fine, but it's really about the closes. Need to see closes above like that 114, 115 area to kick off expansion in earnest to the upside here. And of course, in blue skies, which I would, I'd be looking to the upper third, moving to that fib pull, both local. And I've shown this a few times, but I am getting a lot of newer people that are watching the videos and asking some questions. So the local fib pull on extensions for log scale extensions would be, which by the way, you can use log all the way down to the lower term timeframes. You can flip between linear and log. It's not going to make a difference. So you can just leave log on, but it really does depend on the system that you're using. In this case, the 1414 is up here at 128,250. That is confluent. If this were to, hit blue skies and go on a daily run from the weekly standpoint, that would look pretty good for the upper third to move there as well. But that's confluent with the 1414 on a macro fib pull extension from the prior cycle high to cycle low. And that's right at, just under, but still at that $128,000. And I would look at it as a range. At around 120 to like 130, and refine on lower term timeframes as price moves if that is to occur. I did also want to note that this is a macro 1272. I know you saw it on the daily chart, but it's in that yellow zone support. We see that's been tested quite thoroughly here. Bulls do want to see that hold. That is slightly below the 104 region that I've talked about at 103, 645, 65, but still want to see that area hold. And then when looking at that as from the local prior downtrend here, This is a 786. So right at the 786, this is holding up above an 888 on closes as well. And an 888 is just 88.8% of this move down. So yeah, that's pretty much it for today. I don't really have too much more to offer in terms of analysis. It's kind of the same thing that I've been talking about for quite some time since price got up here. And yeah, I think that I just hold on. Let's fix that. Let's let's not do that. Let's get out of this particular mode, or not, or just screw it all up. I don't know which button. So I'm actually not at my normal setup, so apologies. I usually have hotkeys and stuff, and I goofed that one up. But anyway, yeah, that's going to be it for today. I will, of course, come back at you here on the Friday wrap-up to discuss, kind of where things are on the Friday close, and then take a look at what's coming up for the weekend and what to watch out for over the weekend. Now on Friday, I might not have a stream, but I will let you know tomorrow, Thursday. I'll try to have a stream like I have been doing for the past few weeks. But as I do have some other things going on right now, and I'm not at my normal setup, I'm not sure if I'll be able to do it from the technical side. But I'll see if I have time to set things up, and then possibly have a Friday 5 p.m. 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific live stream looking at altcoins and meme coins. And again, I want to take a look and follow up with the OG meme coins. That was a really fun stream. And correct some things that I looked at the wrong contract on. So my apologies to those of you that had requested in the chat. I looked at that one and not the one in the comments, and I do apologize for that. So I'll go back and look at some of the ones that were in the comments again to make sure I evaluate some of the same tickers that have different contracts or are on different networks. So sorry about that. And yeah, that's going to be it. So I'll talk to you again on Friday, and see at all the different shows. I'll try to make some Thursday shows and some Friday shows as well. So you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. All of that being said, Landy out. Take care.